is part two of the reason for the Holocaust, the Holocaust discussion. And I just want to reiterate before I get going on this portion of the video that it is a discussion that I'm trying to have. I'm not trying to make statements, absolute statements in any regard. Although I have struggled with this issue for a long time and have come up with what I believe is the reason for it. I'm not going to make that statement, but instead make this into a discussion. Back when Schindler's List first came out, I was there probably within the first week that it opened. Didn't know a whole lot about the Holocaust. I knew the little bit that I had learned from a friend of mine who was a Holocaust survivor by the name of Gerda Lowenstein. Gerda had survived it by basically, she and her sister had basically crossed from Germany into Switzerland over the border by basically doing something sexual. I'm not sure exactly what it was. She never would say exactly what it was, but they basically did something sexual to bribe the border guards, and they had some forged papers that they used to get across. And somehow, that by some miracle, they were able to make it. We don't know. I don't know exactly how it happened, but they did something of a sexual nature. Whether they just showed some leg. I don't know what they did. She wouldn't be specific about it. I believe she did write it in her memoirs, but she never did share it with me exactly what it was they did. But they somehow used their femininity to get across the Swiss border and to fool the guards into believing that they were German, German-born, German heritage citizens and not Jews. But she had some pretty interesting stories. She escaped, the torture that the Jewish people went through, by and large, and she was able to make it to the United States eventually, from England to the United States. And she told me the few stories that she had, that she knew about things that happened over there, about life as it was before the Holocaust in Germany as a Jew, and how things escalated, went from just Jewish people being treated like lower second-class citizens on up to the great extinction that occurred, the great forced extinction that occurred, where many innocent people, men, women, and children. Not just, and it wasn't a religious thing. The Jews weren't being killed because of their religion; they were being killed because of their race. There were Jewish people that converted to Catholicism during that time and were taken out of Catholic churches and taken, sent to concentration camps. So it wasn't about religion; it was a racial purity thing, and that's probably the hardest thing to conceive about this whole thing is that it wasn't something that could be changed. It's not something that if somebody comes to my house and says, well, I'm going to kill you unless you do this and this, because there's nothing they could do to change what they were. They couldn't stop being Jewish. And Gerda told me a lot of stories, and she wrote a memoir that was actually taken after she died at age about, I think she died at 99 years old, if I remember correctly. Had a few health problems there towards the end, but nothing that was debilitating, just a few minor health problems. A very healthy person, very loving, very kind person. I did have the chance one time in the 3 or 4 years that we knew each other to witness to her, tell her about Jesus, tell her about the fact that he was her Messiah, and then that she needed him. And as far as I know, she rejected that message, but I still loved her. I still cared about her. I still talked to her. I still took care of her. I went over and helped her clean her house, helped her grocery shop, helped her carry groceries up to the top of the into the elevator into her house and put them away. I read her letters from Germany to her because her eyes were failing. She was a little bit on the blind side. And I learned how to speak and read German by that process. I would pick up the first couple letters I picked up, I would read them, and I would pronounce the words. She'd say, "Oh, no, that's completely wrong, and this is how you pronounce it." And what does it mean? Well, it means this, And in that time, I got to know and love and respect this human being. She was an extraordinary person in many, many ways, and um, just being around her and being of a German descent, having blonde hair, having blue eyes, having white European mindsets about things, and knowing that people just like me in a lot of ways, not I wasn't evil, I wasn't a murderer, but the people that were just in many ways like me were the people that nearly killed her and her entire family, who did almost completely erase her entire ethnic group from the world. Just knowing that I was somewhat similar to the people that did that, yet she was completely accepting of me, completely loving of me, didn't look down on me, didn't judge me or anything. That touched me deeply, and so I began at that time, especially after watching Schindler's List, I began to struggle. Had some deep problems, deep emotional problems, trying to understand what the Holocaust was and why it was. And excuse me. And how people who claimed in many ways to be Christians or of a Christian background could have done such a thing. And even deeper than that, I began to struggle with the whole concept, the things that I've been learning ever since I became a Christian, looking in the Bible, and realizing that the Jews are God's people. They're not simply another ethnic group. They're not just another group, another race. They're God's people, and so there was this huge question mark over the entire thing in my mind and my heart. Now I knew from personal experience that true Christians, couldn't and wouldn't have murdered anybody. There were no true Christians that murdered a single Jewish person in the entire war. That never happened. Anybody that thinks that is just ignorant. I'm sorry. I'm going to say that right up. No true Christian, no true follower of Christ would or could murder another human being in cold blood. They can't. It's impossible. So anybody you say is a Christian and did that, they're not a Christian. They're just not. But I just didn't understand. I didn't understand how God could let that happen. How God could let 6 million of His chosen people perish systematically, including women, children, infants, and many times they were tortured, used for medical experiments. They treated the Jewish people that they had in these so-called hospitals and these so-called doctors worse than they did their animal subjects. Most of the animal subjects were treated with respect. They were given humane medications to help them not feel as much pain as they could have during the procedures. But their Jewish human subjects were treated with less respect than the animals were. And I just couldn't understand how God could let this happen. There had to be a reason for it. But every time I would ever discuss this, open the discussion, talk about it, even mention it to anybody, even Christians, even people who believe that God does everything for a reason, but believe that there's nothing that happens without God having a purpose for it. Even Christians that believe that just close their mind, close their heart, close their everything to the idea that there could be any reason for the Holocaust except for the fact that a lot of evil people got together and murdered people. So, hold on, let me check my video here.